Good afternoon, Reg. Hope you're well.
Good afternoon, Ninder. Absolutely fine, thank you.
Now, normally when I speak to somebody overseas, I'm in the morning, they're at night or something, but for once we share the same. I think you're still in the afternoon, am I right?
Yeah, I think during the summertime, we've only got a 3-hour time difference, but that will change in October to 4 hours. So here we are in the afternoon as it is for you late morning.
And just remind everybody's listening in, you are currently speaking from where?
I'm based and operating out of Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. So Dubai is a city. Most people get confused thinking, oh, they say Dubai, compared to UK and think it's a country. It's not. It's a city in the United Arab Emirates.
Perfect. Now, we met, Reg. I came across you in Clubhouse.
Yes.
And I heard you speak, and then I checked you out, and then I realized you ran a club. There was like a session in itself within Clubhouse, and it was all around family businesses. So I came over to listen to your clubhouse room, and I was amazed by the depth of knowledge you had around family business. In fact, I was so impressed. I asked you to write in the Business Influencer magazine, not once, but twice. So you're in the current issue, and you talk about family businesses. But before we go into how you ended up becoming such an expert in family business, let me just give some context as to why it's important that we're even discussing family business. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a context only in terms of the British economy, but I'm sure this is going to be there. So in Britain, it's only 2018, there were 5.1 million businesses, family businesses. They represent an astonishing 87.6% of private sector firms, family business.
Right.
They employ in the UK 14.2 million people. So we've got to understand how family business works. They raise revenues of 1.9 trillion, and they paid 196 billion into tax receipts.
Yeah,
that's a quarter of the government's total revenue. So you have an important role to play here, Reg. This is big business. And then, of course, so not only they're a really important component of the UK economy, actually, the whole component that was family business, it's a very complex one, and that's why I thought it'd be great to have a discussion. Now, 70% of family businesses either fail or sold before the first generation or second generation takeover. Reasons cited, and you'll add some more: lack of financial education for the children to understand what they're taking on, poor succession planning, and a lack of, this is important, this is where you come in, trusted advisors, somebody who can help them understand what to do. So over to you now then, Reg. I've mentioned the fact that I spotted you in Clubhouse. I thought you were brilliant, and some of the people you bring into the room are brilliant. But I didn't know this, but you built your first business at 17. Crikey, I was playing football on a football pitch at 17. You bounced back, interestingly, from bankruptcy at 21. By 26, gosh, I think I just got my first job. You'd already built your first million. You advise 180 clients privately. You've delivered programs at the Harvard Business School, Oxford University, University of Chicago, Cranfield. You're a best-selling author. You write a lot of contributions to some great magazines, including ours. And you've spoken, interestingly, in more countries than I've ever flown to, in 65 countries. And I love this quote, by the way, and then we'll come into this now. You quote, it is a quote from you, which says, "By putting family first and business second, you have a better chance of building a 100-year legacy. The right balance has to be in place for every family business to drive family unity, business growth, and wealth management." And you know, having been in your Clubhouse room so many times, that I understand fully, because that's what you concentrate on all the time. So I've got to ask you this question, Rich. How the hell did you end up in the Middle East?
First of all, thanks for the introduction. You've obviously done your research, which is great. And for your listeners and your regular viewers here for your podcast, as well as link to your Business Influencer magazine. And you're doing a wonderful job there, by the way, Ninder. Great publication. For those who don't know about Clubhouse, I've never heard of it, because Ninder mentioned it quite a few times. Yeah, whether it's LinkedIn or any other social media platform, it's another platform.
That's right.
But it's digital, voice-based. It's people who come together, and we started in May of 2020. March of 2021, when we got really active on there, and we built the Family Business Academy Club on Clubhouse. And you're right, running regular live rooms with great guests, great moderators, great topics. That whole club has grown tremendously. But linking it back to some of the things that you've said, Ninder, I think I probably have to go back a bit before I talk about how I ended up in the Middle East, if that's okay. So I'm born in the UK, born in the United Kingdom, in Middlesex, and grew up in places like in Langley and Slough, where my parents still live, and then in Windsor as an adult. And then when I got married, we're in a place called Leatherhead in Surrey. But been based in Dubai, UAE now for 16, almost 17 years. And the story linked to family business and some of the stats that you've shared. Our family started with a first generation entrepreneur being my grandfather in northern India. And as a young boy, I had a chance every year with my parents to travel to India and hang out with my grandfather, who I found to be a phenomenal gentleman, just in terms of his character, the way he came across, the way he treated people. He was a serial entrepreneur, but he was also a humanitarian and always giving back to communities. And he inspired me. He definitely had an impact on my probably subconscious mind and not my conscious mind at that time. And unfortunately, in talking about why family businesses, 30% will get to second generation, 12 to 15% get to third generation, and only 2 to 3%, depending on which part of the world you look at, survive to fourth generation and end up building 100-year legacy. And my grandfather had a big vision to build a family business legacy. He was trying to inspire the second generation, my father's generation, but unfortunately had an accident at a fairly young age. And there's a short gap between his generation and my father's generation. And for my father's generation, to me, there's only a 21-year gap. So everyone's very close to each other because they had children when they were fairly young. And so he passed away when he was young. And I remember that day, Ninder, when we got that phone call at home in the UK, and the look on my father's face of something's happened. And he put the phone down, he was shivering. And then he told us what had happened. It was such a shock, because it was only 3 years prior to that. And I was coming up to my 10th birthday at the time. 3 years prior to that, I'd started to build this wonderful relationship with him, where he would park me on top of his shoulders and would walk around, and he'll be telling him about the businesses and what's happened. Say, one day you'll be looking after all of this. And he was trying to sow those seeds into my mind from a very young age. Unfortunately, the second generation sabotaged everything. As soon as he passed away, the second generation started to fight over the assets. And there was lots of underlying issues there in the family between the brothers, my father's generation, from a very young age. And I think a lot of them thought he was more privileged than they were because he had a chance to migrate to the UK as a teenager, and they did not. So cutting a long story short, because I could spend 3 hours talking about this, but that had a huge impact on me as a young boy. That here's my grandfather, who I'm inspired by, has built this, sowed seeds into my mind, and right in front of my eyes, I can see people fighting over what he's built. That disturbed me. And the second thing that disturbed me was when my father said to me, all those people that we meet in India every year that we call family, they are no longer family. And as a young boy in India, you can't get your head around that. It's like, well, 1 minute you're telling me they're my family, now you're telling me they're not my family. I don't get it. And I think that's really what impacted me and started me on a journey of personal development, understanding people, HR, human capital management, psychology. And those are the areas that I got involved in from a fairly young age. I found some great mentors when I was 17, 18, 19. One of them was a management consultant. And he also got me into a bit of public speaking and training. So all of those things eventually led to this linkage and integration with family business, where I've been doing this for a number of years, dealing in human capital, training CEOs on building dream teams. I built my own human capital executive search business. And that was nothing to do with family business apart from, yeah, I was dealing with the odd entrepreneur and I was dealing with corporates. And family business did not even come into my mind. And then one day I'm speaking at an event in the UAE, a big conference, 500 owners. And at that time, I'd already built my personal brand as a speaker and published a few books. And a couple of gentlemen from Saudi Arabia came and approached me after my talk and said, Mr. Reg, we love your content when you talk about dream teams and building the right teams and HR areas. Is there any chance we could fly you to Saudi Arabia and come and meet the family and maybe give us your perspective on the business issues that we've got? And then I flew out. I was there for almost a week. And they told me they had business issues. But after a few days, I realized, number one, there's a lot of family members here. And I counted and eventually realized, wow, there's 47 family members working in this family business conglomerate for 4 generations. And each one of them have never had someone like me turn up from the outside, whispering in my ear over breakfast, lunch, and dinners and meetings and walkarounds, telling me about their underlying issues. And then the penny dropped. Wow, this family, they don't have business issues. They have family issues.
Yeah.
With 4 generations all looking at things differently, it reminded you of my childhood and my grandfather. I thought, if they don't sort this out, they're going to sabotage their legacy. And that is how I got into family business. And I decided at the end of that week, Ninder, that I will spend the rest of my life till my last breath supporting family businesses around the world to make sure they get it right to build a legacy and don't sabotage their success. And eventually that took me around the world. And a few years after that, because I loved Dubai, had visited quite a number of times and thought, wow, this could be a great place as a hub, because the percentage is even higher than the UK when it comes to number of family businesses in India, Pakistan, UAE, GCC. So I hope that helps as a starting point.
It's fantastic. I didn't realize you're right. It was seeing that at such an early age. So let's get to, as an outsider, what would you say are the basic differences between a normal business and a family business? I mean, you hinted at it just then. You said, actually, they didn't have a business problem. What they had was a family problem. So what are the advantages and disadvantages? So what makes a family business tick well versus a non-family business? And equally, what are the problems you see with family business that you wouldn't see in a? Does that make sense? So just a bit of an understanding for people on the outside. Think, well, what does he mean, family? What are those characteristics?
Yeah, definitely. I think having a chance, I've had a chance in my earlier part of my career to work with corporates. Yeah. And before I got into family business, and yes, there was huge difference. I think when you're a family member working with another family member, there's a huge amount of pride, first of all. Pride linked with loyalty, linked with purpose. Yeah, this is us. This is ours. So where in corporates you may have people who come and go on a regular basis. I remember when I first built my first executive search headhunting business in my early 20s. At that time, and I'm now 48. So putting it into context, in those days, people said, oh, the average person will last in a company between 7-10 years. Well, now it's 2-3 years, and in certain industries, it's not even 18 months. So in the corporate world, you've got people coming and going all the time. In a family business, that doesn't happen. You've got people there who are in it. They're in completely invested because it's the family business. So when you're dealing with customers and you're dealing with suppliers and dealing with people in the market, a lot of people like that they're dealing with a family owner or they're dealing with a next gen member. I think that is a huge bonus, huge plus. Having said that, over 100 years, family businesses, 2-3% will survive to fourth generation. But you know that percentage then is higher than a normal corporate of success. So if you take the FTSE 100, Global 250 list and look at the last 100 years and see how many of those companies are still here today. You know, and the ones that are here today, a lot of them will be family businesses versus the others that got acquired and swallowed up or died.
Yeah.
So family businesses last longer than traditional corporates. Okay, even though the percentage is only 2-3% last to fourth generation. So there's the benefit. Let's look at the pros and cons. The benefits is if there's a big if the unity and harmony is there, if the unity and harmony is there, regular communication and the family are united as one, and they're building a business. Every 7 to 10 years, there's always some disaster or a challenge in the world, whether it's economically, socially, whether, as we've seen what's happening around the world right now, pandemic, as we've seen what's happened recently, there's always something. So if a family is united and has harmony and communicating regularly, and there's no family issues, even if the business fails, goes bankrupt, is dead, those family members can come together and rebuild a lot faster than traditional businesses. But the flip side, Ninder, is if the unity and harmony is not there and regular communication is not there, and now you've got a business challenge or an issue where the business is failing, then it's inevitable that that blame is going to go somewhere and eventually the family will split.
Sorry, let me now throw something else in then. If I went to work for a family business, could it be argued, first I love the idea about people moving in and out. So I suppose one of the cons or one of the disadvantages of family business is, yeah, you have stability, but you don't have that fresh talent coming in, bringing in new ideas. And I suppose the second thing you might think is that if you join a family business, you realize that there's a pecking order. So in other words, if I'm an outsider, the likelihood is that there's a glass ceiling, but potentially there's a glass ceiling, and that people at the top will always be family business members. Does that make sense? So there's a sort of those couple of disadvantages.
There's a yes and no there, because
okay,
every family is unique. Every family, when it comes to, you know, if you've got 5 people in one family, 5 in another, and you take their thoughts, their emotions, their culture, their upbringing, their environment, and then you link it with the industry and the size of the business, put that all into one soup bowl and let it swim around, it's unique. So every family is unique. So even if I share any case studies with you today, it doesn't mean you can copy and paste that and it will work. Every family is unique. So when it comes to structures, I think this is the first thing to make sure one builds to build a successful family business. You need some level of structure. And there are different structures. So there'll be some family businesses where everybody is in the business.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a role in the business. They're playing their part. It's great. And it's a flat structure. Everyone's sort of reporting into each other and it works. And that could work for a couple of generations. And if you get to 3rd generation and more family members are joining, then it won't work. There needs to be a lot more clarity in terms of job role. There needs to be a proper structure. There's other family businesses that decide, okay, we're in the business, but we really want to shift to being on the business or directors or investors, but we don't want to be involved in the day-to-day. So they end up bringing in professionals from an early stage, and eventually the CEO will change and rotate every 3, 5, 6, 7 years, but the family still own the business and they're still involved at board level. And then you've got hybrid versions of that, where you've got family businesses where family members are building certain businesses, are hands-on, and there's other businesses that they've professionalized. So they've got an in role, but they've also got a board of director role at the same time, wearing 2 hats. And then you get the extreme right at the top of the pyramid. Some of the most wealthiest family businesses in the world have transitioned to establishing what we call family offices.
Yeah.
Whether it's 2 people in the family office with the members, or the largest I've come across is 60 employees managing $5 billion of wealth right now for a family, where none of the family are involved in any of the business or investments. It's all managed by professionals. They're probably enjoying themselves, or they're looking at the next deal that they want to do, and they just want to look at the bottom line and make sure that the profits and dividends are increasing on an annual basis. So going back to your first comment about UK, there's probably over 5.5 million family businesses now in the UK. You've got to remember, most of those would be under £1 million a year revenue businesses. Yeah. So the first thing I mentioned would apply where you've got at least 2 family members in that business. And it's a lifestyle business, essentially. It keeps them occupied, they're working, gives them a level of satisfaction, gives them purpose, and they're working with their family. And it's managing all of their overheads. They've probably got a little bit left, and they're using that to maybe invest in a few things. I think that's typically most of the family businesses in what I call bottom of the pyramid, tier 3 family businesses.
You keep mentioning the word structure. You keep mentioning the word structure, and that example you gave at the start, when you walked into that family, there's 46 members. And of course, and you're right, with every extra generation, the complexity increases. If the business also grows, the complexity grows from a business perspective, systems, processes. So they're managing the processes and systems. They're now trying to work out the family members. So you keep talking about the word structure. Do most businesses that fail to maintain a legacy, is it because of structure that no one sat down at the outset and said, let's put a structure in place? Would you say?
Yes, a great question. Great question. Not necessarily. When we're educating family businesses around in our education division now, we've impacted about 20,000 families globally now in 65 countries with private and public programs, and in collaboration, like you mentioned, with institutions. And when we're educating them, Ninder, or privately for a family, and I'm happy to get this to you if anybody wants to follow up with your office, we can send this to them as value addition. But we have a framework that we use, and we've got essentially 2 lists. We've got what we call legacy blockages and what we call emotional blockages. And on the legacy blockages list, structure is only one of the 10. Okay, only one of them. So there's many other things there. So it could be around structure. It could be around lack of communication. Okay, that comes up quite high in a lot of family businesses that have issues where proper communication is not happening on a frequent basis. Everyone's busy doing their own thing, or something's happened, and that's now prevented them from having open communication. And with multi-generational family businesses and everyone busy doing so many things within that family business, communication can definitely die, or there's more personalities involved now, and that can also have an impact. So lack of communication, a lack of structure, a lack of strategy, okay, a lack of vision, which is linked also to lack of strategy, a lack of innovation, lack of governance, lack of structure, which then links to governance, lack of talent. What I mean by that is no more family members who want to join the family business. No one else wants to join. So how do you keep this legacy going now when there's no more branches left and nobody wants to join? So those are just a few of them where there are ways of sorting those things out. You know, whether it's an intervention, facilitation, mentoring, coaching, or it's process system based where some type of methodology process system has to be implemented. And then when you get into governance, Ninder, there's a whole bunch of things under governance, probably about 30 other sub areas to deep dive into to get governance right. So that's on one side. On the other side is what I call emotional blockages. Yeah. So emotional blockages could be abuse, from mild to extreme. It could be jealousy. It could be frustration. Okay, it could be blame. There's many, ego, fear. There's a whole bunch of things connected on the list on the right-hand side, which we refer to as emotional blockages. And on the left-hand side, legacy blockages. And these two have to eventually come together where all of these areas are fixed, sorted out, and then there's new habits being built where eventually becomes the new DNA of the family, where when emotional blockage does show up, because it will, always something will come up that's new, the family know exactly how to go and resolve that. There's a method and an approach. At the same time, on the left-hand side, they're also clear, for example, on governance and structure. Do we have a family constitution? Do we have a family charter? Do we have a roadmap, some sort of blueprint that everybody signed up to and implemented and saying, yeah, that is our philosophy. Those are our great guiding principles. That is the foundation of our family. Sorry if I'm going off in different.
No.
That helps because it is very complex.
It's complex. It's complex. So again, just an example, we talked about the difference between a small lifestyle business and a large conglomerate. In the UK, we have the Morrison supermarket, which was family owned, and it's about to be sold. And it's interesting how that evolved as it grew and grew, got extra funding, and how now that could be totally owned by somebody else. And the family, I think, it's only got about 16%. But you can see how that evolved. So back to the smaller ones. So often, when things go wrong, I mean, I personally think it's people not thinking at the outset, because when you set up a company, you work out the shareholdings, but nobody else works anything else out. Nobody thinks, well, we need to think 10, 20 years ahead. How will this fold? And the kids come and you get married and so forth. So conflict tends to start to emerge, particularly, I think, for two reasons. Either if a company is in financial distress, then the conflict starts, or actually if it starts to do well and new members start to come in. So with you, I see three areas of conflict. It'd be interesting to get your views. You can have conflict across the same generation. You gave your example of your father and his brothers. You have that conflict. You have conflict across different generations. So the next generation comes in and sees the world in a different way. And you can also have conflict where the staff, people coming in, feel that the owners, which could be any one of those reasons, it's not working. And you start to get conflict. They start saying to one member, your son's doing this, your uncle's doing that. Well, what do you find? What seems to be the biggest area of conflict that family business should think about even now when they hear you speak?
Good question. I think for us personally, with the work we've done on the advisory side, now we've, as you mentioned in my intro, thank you so much. We've worked with 180 family businesses now, from anything from first to 12th generation in 25 countries and many different cultures. And if I was to answer that question of where's the commonality, where's the thread across all those businesses, it's definitely to do with the work that I started doing before I got into family business, and that's probably why it's been successful, is people. Okay, structures will evolve, governance models will evolve, processes will evolve, innovation will evolve, product services will evolve. But the most important thing, the thread that runs all the way through, is understanding people. And it's people who make or break businesses.
Yep.
So people, as in family members, how well do they know each other? Do they understand each other? Do they understand what's going on for each person in terms of their personal needs, their challenges, their issues, what their vision looks like, why they're here, what they would like to achieve? So that's quite easy to do when you're first gen, second gen, like you mentioned. But once the second gen get married, assuming most of them get married, you've now got different dynamics. You've got the core family members who are part of the bloodline, who've all grown up together. Yeah. So there is conflict or issues, they sort them out, and it's a love-hate relationship, but you're brothers and sisters, so you just work it out. And now that second generation members are getting married, and a spouse is coming into the equation. So if you have got three second generation members, and they, in this example, all get married, you've got the values of the core family, and you've got the values of the spouses are also marrying into that family. Yeah. Now put all of that in the same melting pot, the same bowl of soup, and let that swim around. Okay. And then you've got the generation 3 that come along, where you've got, we've now gone from sibling relationships to cousin relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
And spouses, more spouses coming in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you put that into the melting pot. And all of that combined with different emotions and thoughts and needs, combined with personalities. Then that your personality is different to my personality. I mean, if I take one of our books here, Unleash Your Family Business DNA, one of our best-selling books here, in the middle is this model, but this model that we created over 20 years ago is based on understanding the 9 DNA profiles of family members. And behind those 9 profiles, there's 72 different sequences to the model. So when we think, oh yeah, that person's that person's that, well, actually, no, once you blend in 4 of the different profiles together, that person is completely unique and different to the other. So Ninder, I'll give you an example. If I take one of the profiles in our model, and I'll use labels for now, keep it simple. One's called an innovator, okay? And the other one is called an investor.
Yeah.
The traits of the innovators are what we call a DNA profile, and linked to personality is an innovator, someone who's a very fast mind.
Yeah.
Their mind works really, really quick with ideas. They're visionary, they're pioneering. If you put them in a room, they can inspire people with ideas really quickly. But if you put them in a family business working in a management role every day, they will also confuse people just as quickly because they keep changing their mind often.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're inspiring. And if we take the investor profile, let's say this happens to be the brother, okay, of the first profile I've mentioned. These are 2 brothers, and the brother is an investor profile, which is someone who's really introvert and quiet, slow thinker. They love research, they love data, they love being thorough, evaluating, assessing things, and they look at the long term as well, but from a risk point of view. While the other brother looks at long-term purely from an idea point of view. Now, if you put these same people in the same family business, conflict will arise, just based on their profiles being different. And we haven't combined that with spouses. We haven't combined that with environment, working conditions, what salary you're on, what your allowances are, okay, what the succession plan is, what the governance looks like for the business. We haven't even included any of that right now. We're only looking at the profiles, and yet we've got issues. Ninder, imagine now a family with 10, 15, 20, 25 people. So if we don't, to answer that question, if we don't invest time in understanding that everyone has a different view, a different lens that they look through, everyone has different personality, strengths and weaknesses, different communication codes. If you don't understand that, that eventually is going to show up in the family business.
So, one of our sessions we spoke about, and so I want to bring this to you now because you mentioned it in the article that's due to be published next week. We talked about boardrooms, and one of the distinctions between, and I run a family business, so I can tell you now, the difference between a non-family business versus family business, strategic decisions might be made over a bowl of cereal. Whereas a non-family business will have a formal structure. Now, you talked about those different personality DNAs. A chairman would be able to work that out, would be able to position them, work the board, so that at the end, if he's a good chairman, we'll come to a consensus whilst understanding the difference between the innovator and the investor. But of course, in a family business, I wouldn't call it lack of self-awareness, but for those who haven't worked in corporate, those kind of strategic decisions are made informally like that. And then, of course, memories become hazy. And so is that one of the issues, that family businesses tend to operate more on an informal basis as opposed to non-family? And is that one of the big issues when we talk about structure and how you run the thing?
Yeah, I think that would be fairly accurate, and especially with the analogy of the cereal bowl, or having breakfast together. You're right. You know, whether it's breakfast or around the lunch, at
That's
lunchtime,
right.
around the lunch table, or dinner time, most family businesses. If I could share with your viewers, this would be very important distinction. There's a difference between a business family and a family business.
Okay.
So most family businesses, when they say they're family businesses, the way they conduct themselves and the way they operate, operating system is that of a business family. What I mean by that, and that goes to the where you quoted me at the beginning with one of my quotes, most businesses talking business, family businesses are talking business 24 hours a day.
Yeah, that's right.
Breakfast time business, lunchtime business, dinner time business. And that carries on. And if the founders or the first generation are doing that, that makes sense because they're trying to build something for the future and put all their effort in building this for the next generation. Second generation grow up watching all of this. So they end up developing similar habits and they end up doing the same thing and equally work just as hard. And it's all about business. So as the family becomes bigger towards third generation, if we don't switch now from business family, weightage wise in terms of communication, what we discuss, to family business, which is we need to spend more time on the family piece instead of just the business, that business will not go beyond third generation.
So how do you inculcate that that level of formality? How can you get people to think like that? That actually a decision made over lunch or over a cereal bowl or over a small a cup of tea. How do you get people to start thinking about regimenting? Because if their lifestyle, which is what you referred to earlier, that's a difficult thing to do.
It doesn't have to be complicated. When we talk about things like family charters, you hear these words like family charter, family constitutions.
Yeah.
One of the largest families we work with, they have a 200-page document, which is their family constitution. Wow. So when you say regimented, if a country can have a constitution, why can't a family have a constitution? Because it's clarity. It gives clarity on exactly what we need to do and how we work and what our operating system is as a family, rather than leaving it to random chance. But a small family business, a family SME, may only require a 7-8 page document that clearly expresses what the guiding principles are, values are, a bit around vision and purpose. And there's alignment there as a family. So, going back to being regimented, I'll give you one example. What do we mean by business, family, family, business? Well, we keep having all these business meetings and talking business, but when was the last time we had a family forum for a couple of days where all we do is talk about family?
Okay.
Okay, I'm using that as a very simple example of something we implement with a lot of our clients, or an extended version of that would be a family retreat. That may happen every couple of years, which is linked to a vacation as well. But there's an agenda. There's key things that happen over 4, 5, 6 days where family members are coming together. Let me give you an example from my own family. So in our family charter, we have 6 values. Okay, 6 core values, which are our guiding principles for the entire family. And whenever we have a family forum, pre-COVID, it was twice a year. So 2 forums a year for a couple of days each, and then one could be an extended every couple of years as part of a 7 to 10 day vacation linked to family forum as well. So family forum, we have agenda items, and this is what happens in our family forum. Right, everybody, mum, dad, all the next generation, take turns, one by one, to write. We've got all of our 6 family values there on a piece of paper. Write down the name of each family member next to it and rank them from 0 to 10 in all 6 values, each family member, 10 being outstanding when it comes to expressing that value. 0 would be completely neglected, has forgotten about this value altogether. What number would you give? So my daughter has the right in our family to sit down and say, Dad, when it comes to trust, one of our family values, I'm going to give you a 6 out of 10, Dad. Oh, wow. And by the way, no one should take it personally, because it's feedback and we all need that. And then I have to ask her, so can you give me examples of why I scored a 6 in your mind?
Yeah.
Great. And what do you feel I need to do to become a 6.57 in the next 6 months? Once she's complete, I can then go back to her and say, by the way, when it comes to trust, I want to give you an 8.5. Here's the reasons why. There's really not much to improve. But however, if I take another one of our values, I'm going to give you a 3. The reason why is because we all agreed as a family that expression of that value is we're meant to speak to each other every week. And there's been months where you have not communicated with the whole family on a frequent basis. So that needs to step up so that value can be expressed. Is that okay? So if everyone agrees to doing that, and a day is spent on talking about family and each person's personal needs and vision and what they would like to achieve as a family, can you see the power of that instead of just talking about business?
I've just got your article here from the next issue of the magazine, and you talk about why boards fail, and one of the reasons you put no ground rules, and we looked at constitution, we looked at the charter. You also said no timely information. So is that because the processes aren't right, or is that part of the emotional where they just don't pass details on? When you say poor no timely information, what do you mean by no timely information?
By that, and I hope all your viewers get a chance to read that article, where that article number 2 in your magazine was really focused on professionalizing boards, whether it's a business board or a family board, and where boards go wrong. And when it comes to one of those tips was around information, we facilitated over a couple of thousand family board meetings, family meetings the last 20 years as a company. And what we've seen as a pattern is most of these families have never been formally trained on how to run a board meeting. They just don't know. So the first thing is around educating them. So when we talk about timely information, if we're going to make decisions in that board meeting, there's got to be certain information available. And I give an example, Ninder. Families will go, we're going to bring in our financial controller into the board meeting. And the financial controller's got no presentation. In fact, he or she has just copy and pasted the 15,000 numbers from the spreadsheet, whacked them into a PowerPoint. And now we're looking at screen at 15,000 numbers and trying to make heads and tails of what's going on in the business. So timely information can come in different ways. It could be people have had a chance to look at certain documents. We've summarized those financials the right way and checked them out before coming to the meeting. Maybe there's special projects going on in the family business. Maybe there's a new investment decision that needs to be made. So where are the details on that investment, instead of trying to do everything from scratch in that meeting? Because everyone is also built differently. So one person may look at the numbers and understand them immediately. Someone else will look at them and go, I can't understand any of that. Someone else will look at a proposal and go, hang on, I can't make a decision based on what you're presenting today. I need time to digest it. But somebody else in the room is impatient, going, no, we've got to make a decision by 5 o'clock today. So there's many touch points, then, if that makes sense, where information has to flow in advance the right way before having that meeting.
Okay, as someone who sat on a number of boards, and I've chaired a few, so here's an interesting dynamic. So the timely information, I've seen that also happen in non-family businesses, but here's the distinction now. But I think in running a board, which is family run, is different, I think, in a lot of respects, to chairing a board, which is not family run. So I'll give you an example. If I'm one of many on a non-family business, we tend to be quite dispassionate. We're not so hooked. But I can see the founder, the father, chairing the board meeting. He's been doing it. He's been running the business for 25, 30 years. He's used to having his own way. And you can almost see that it'd be interesting to sit in a dynamic and watch how that board operates, both in terms of same generation, if they're used to it, and the lower generation who may have a different thinking. And I think one of the probably challenges is getting a family business to understand, you've just said it yourself, how to run a board, and how to get the information. It's a totally different dynamic because it's driven by, and it could be owned, the whole thing could be owned by that one person who's been driving it for 20. And that must be difficult to explain to an entrepreneur. Listen, you have to let the strings go a bit. Is that right?
Yeah, again, you're right. I mean, and that's where it goes to the understanding of the DNA and the personalities in the room, because it's family members having a board meeting. So that's going to play out in different ways. There could be members in there who just keep their mouth shut and they don't want to say anything, but they would like to say something, but they can't because of the dominant father or mother who could be in the room. There could be many dynamics that are happening in that boardroom. Then maybe somebody's made a mistake. What happens if they got a huge amount of respect for each other? It's the opposite. And as a result of that, it's hard to communicate to someone else in the room to say, hey, by the way, you're not performing. You're not contributing. Now, in a typical corporate world, if you've got a whole bunch of professionals there, what would you do? You'd have HR get involved and say, here's your key result areas for the year and the KPIs, and here's our budget. By the way, you haven't hit targets. We need to sort this out. Or second time round, there's a letter given to them. Third time, there's a warning. Next time, you're out. Well, that may not happen in a family business. So there's other dynamics that are going on, which is people, family related, as well as the agenda items of making sure that we looking at, is the business healthy? Is it doing well? Is it on track? Are we making the right decisions? And like you put it, Ninder, earlier, from a personality point of view, what if you've got a dominant person in the room who's manipulating other people, got a massive ego, talks a lot, and is not giving other people a chance to come through?
You just reminded me of, so just imagine, Reg, now this wouldn't happen in the corporate world, but what happened in the family world. Say you and I were brothers sitting on the same board, you and I fall out on a Friday afternoon, and neither of us can reconcile. Now, normally in a corporate world, weekend comes, by Monday you might have had a different thinking. Trouble is, Reg, we're at a family wedding tomorrow, so you can see the dynamics still continuing into the wedding, and we're still seething, unreconciled. But it's in the corporate world, you got those couple of days, a bit like your HR, to cool down, reevaluate, rethink. So I think that's what makes, running a family business that much more complicated. And of course, then there's the spouses as well.
You're right. It does complicate things, but again, there needs to be ground rules. This is where the charter comes in and setting some ground rules, which you say, okay, around here and in our family business, it doesn't matter if we've got fireworks, we've got a volcanic eruption going on in the meeting room. Let's all agree, if that ever happens, we've got a right to disagree. We've got a right to have these conversations. But the minute we open that door and leave, we leave it in the room. And the minute we leave that room, we give each other hugs. We are family, we're one, and this is a business situation. Now, it's tough to do, but I'm giving you an example where there's got to be some ground rules and understanding of how to operate as a family when these things come up. Or if there are, let's say we are at that wedding example that you've given, and another family member spots that these two are not talking with each other, then again, there needs to be guidelines in the family. We have to, because you have to protect the family business, which is maybe there's some facilitation required. Maybe we need to go to, there's a body called what we call the family council in larger family businesses, and maybe we need to go to the family council and bring this up. Okay, we have got a right. We've signed up to this to say, oh, by the way, you two need to, we're going to have a meeting on Monday. You guys need to come in a room and have a chat. But if we leave it, if we don't have those ground rules and agreement in place, and those two don't talk to each other for 3 months, and their next generation are watching this, what do you think is going to happen?
By the way, I've seen that happen where two cousins just weren't talking at a function. They just weren't talking. Now, talking about reacting, talk about being proactive, you argue in the article that family businesses and boards particularly suffer from a lack of strategic planning. Now, so maybe you could add a bit of flesh on that, and then I want to finish with my last question of that. So, strategy is so important in getting that legacy to continue. Without the strategy, that legacy is not going to happen. So what are the common problems, and why do you argue that in family businesses, there can be a lack of strategic planning.
The only reason for that statement, Ninder, is because we've experienced it with so many family businesses where their version of strategy, the DNA of the founder was very much a deal maker, running on instinct, doing deals, trading mindset, connecting the dots and making things happen. And I get that. That works with a lot of founders who have got that entrepreneurial spirit. But as that family business grows, and what they started 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, whenever it was, things have changed. The world has changed. If we go back 30, 40 years, you could be involved in a business and it would take maybe a decade before somebody could really copy you. And 40 years ago, we weren't using the internet. There was no social media. There was no mobile phones. So I think now, even more so because of the way the world has changed, is educating these family businesses that if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a strategy of how we're going to grow market share, how we're going to bring in more products and services, how we're going to reach new markets, and instead of just doing things ad hoc, day by random chance based on gut, which, may have worked for you before, your business is much larger now. You've got a lot more competition in the marketplace. And that's the reason why I've made that statement, Linda, is people need to be educated, a lot of family businesses. What is strategy? Okay. And more importantly, how do you put a strategy together which is nimble and adaptable? Because the days of having a 76-page document done, which takes 12 months to do by a consulting firm, okay, and say, here's your strategy, this is what we're going to execute, game up, forget it. That just doesn't apply in today's world. You need not only a strategic plan, but you need a plan where you can adapt and be nimble and have a mixture of the entrepreneurial spirit that a family business has and learn a little bit from what corporates do. And if you can blend the two together, it's a powerful combination. And we've seen family businesses go into double-digit, 3-digit growth. We keep a track of all our numbers. And in 20 years, all the family businesses we work with on the strategy side, on the growth side, we know we've added $6.2 billion to their revenue growth or equity value in 20 years by making sure that they follow a certain strategic process.
Having dealt with a lot of family businesses, and the last 18 months have been very testing, how have family businesses coped? Because obviously some of the bigger multinationals, they got big reserves and they can be dispassionate in many places. They can shut places down and just walk away. Whereas family businesses are ingrained in their community. People know who they are. Reputation becomes key. What people think of their brand, because their brand is so closely aligned to the business. So how have do you think family businesses coped with the last 18 months? And has it caused problems that maybe multinationals don't have, but a family business would with crisis management?
Yeah, again, I could give you examples on both sides. There's family businesses that have gone through hard times, depending on which country they're in. Yeah. The number of lockdowns that they've been in. Yeah. And lots of other factors around that versus maybe other countries where it's being managed successfully, tight restrictions, if you take the pandemic example, and businesses that have still done well. It also depends on the industry that you're in. As you know, whether if you're in retail or there's been lockdown situations in certain industries, it's been impossible to keep your doors open. I get that. But where I've seen businesses, let's say retail, gone through hardship, I've got one right now as a client where they've had to upgrade their entire strategy. Where they had ideas 3 years ago, 4 years ago to reduce the number of retail outlets and start linking it with technology and e-commerce. And they hesitated. They hesitated year after year because they were used to bricks and mortar retail businesses. Well, when the pandemic came along and it hit them badly, it forced them to think that way. And as a result of that, this one particular client with over 100 outlets is scaling back to 8 outlets.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. 8 outlets across 7, 8 countries. So they realized that by having flagship stores in the right location, repurposed with a front-end store, with a back-end logistics center, okay, with e-commerce, and re-looking at their distribution channel, how they operate with agents and affiliates, and looking at the entire distribution model, they can reach customers faster with lower overhead. And as a result of now testing that model out, within the next couple of years, not only will they have growth, they'll be more profitable than they've ever been before. So the point here, Ninder, is pandemic or no pandemic, there were things that we knew about our business before the pandemic. The pandemic just accelerated things of making certain decisions. Okay, that's what's happened. At a family level, the pandemic has told us that succession planning has become even more important than before. I was just reading an article recently with research done from a company stating that because of all of the challenges during the pandemic with family members and what's happened in health and well-being, that succession now is even more important to senior members going, if something does happen to me in the next few years, 5 years, where is our structures? How do we hand over? Will this legacy continue? And I'm talking in 3 areas, because people confuse succession with only one area. Succession at family level, keeping the family unity and the communication harmony. Where's the succession plan for that? Business. Where is the succession plan for the business and the professionals who work in it, or family members who work in it, and making sure that that business carries on growing? And third, succession when it comes to wealth management and ownership. A lot of people focus on succession to do with wealth, but if you don't have succession with family matters as well as business matters, your legacy is still not going to last.
Final question. I started with the example of the importance of family businesses in the UK. You've dealt with a lot of businesses across the globe. Let me ask you my one last question. Is running a business and the cultural aspects, the emotional and the business aspects of running a family business exactly the same, irrespective of whichever country you're talking about? Is the dynamics of it exactly the same, or does it slightly differ culturally?
Principles are the same.
Yeah.
But everything else is not the same. And what I mean by that is probably the first article in your Business Influencer magazine that you asked me kindly to develop and create and write for you was around cultural codes.
That's right.
That's where it's different. So it's same as in the principles are the same. Do we have communication as a family? Yeah. Is there unity? Is there harmony? Do you have a structure? Do you have governance? Do you have a strategy? Do we have a succession plan? All of those are principles that have to be adopted. But then on the other side of it is we've got cultural differences. As I wrote in the article in your magazine, if I take the UAE, I'm in Dubai, but if I travel for 1 hour to my right and head towards Abu Dhabi and start doing business with family businesses in Abu Dhabi, the culture there is completely different to Dubai. If I jump on a plane and go from Dubai to Bahrain, or go to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, or spend another 8 hours and get to Birmingham in the UK, or London, or go to Glasgow in Scotland, the culture is different. And that is really important to understand, of how things are done and the invisible code that we have of the operating system within the family. And what becomes more interesting in those, when you've got a multi-generational family with lots of people getting married and living all over the world.
Yeah.
One example would be, Ninder, is a family business I know where they sent all of their 5 next generation to the US to study. And then they stayed out there a little bit longer, did their masters, and eventually all came back to the family business. And it was a disaster in the boardroom for the father. Father is from Asian background, grew up in Asia. And he said to me, Reg, I don't understand what's happened to my kids. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, we all these values that we had before about respect and in it together as one, building this together, how we communicate with each other. They now come back and they have an individualistic mindset. I said, yeah, I understand. I said, because of the 6-7 years they spent in a different country, and they've now got those cultural codes that they come back with. I said, it's not that it's wrong. We need a hybrid version, because we need a bit of what they've got, because that could bring innovation and new ventures and regeneration paths for the family business. But at the same time, they also need to keep a balance with how this business was built in the first place and the cultural codes within this country. And Ninder, that's where it gets more complicated as family members are all over the world.
I remember in one of your sessions on Clubhouse, we said something we all share in a family is the bloodline, but we're all essentially very different people. And that's the challenge for a family business, is understanding that everybody's different. Reg, it's been fascinating speaking to you. I knew it would be, having sat in your rooms. Thank you for taking time out. And listen, well, like I said, we'll certainly send you a couple of magazines out to you as well. And for those of you who can't get a hold of the physical, just for September, we're going to be then doing a paywall, but your article is available digitally as well. Wonderful. And certainly look at Reg's books. Fantastic, a really unique insight into family business. And once again, Reg, thank you very much, and keep up the brilliant work on all the channels that you're available. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ninder. Much appreciated. Thank you.